What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the conversation. Shout out to you, Josh, for the challenge. I appreciate the opportunity, brother, to jump on and contribute. Listen, folks, this is the continuation of the last episode where I wanted to talk and touch on a topic a good friend in the space, EQ, Quality Fragrances. Shout out to you, sir. He brought up the conversation, the idea, the concept, where you need to be making sure that you're not the best in the room, the smartest in the room, the most accomplished in the room. Now, last episode I started to delve into it, but I wanted to bring clarification. So today's episode is just that, the conversation, clarity. In particular, clarity of purpose. That idea where you are the weakest link in the room, temporarily, albeit. It's not comfortable, and that's the point. It's not supposed to be familiar. It's not supposed to be nice or easy. That entire thing is to bring you into a space where you are either going to choose to remain as you are, or you will take certain steps and precautions to improve. How in the heck does that relate to fragrances? For me, I won't speak for you. It may come across as footage. For me, fragrances were a part of giving myself permission to enter these spaces with a bit more confidence in me. Some of these spaces, as I just mentioned, you are the weak link. You potentially have the least to offer. That isn't always comfortable. But when you do so, you need to make sure that you're doing it with a purpose, with a function. Last time I had mentioned, brought up, that it started out with a promise for me. That promise was to do the best that I could. I did that during a meetup with Mr. Chris Classic, owner of Savoir Faire. And it was a Detroit fragrance meetup, the first one that I was made aware of, thanks to you, member in the community. Shout out to you, E-Cron. Remember those live streams. Always keep those notifications on, people. You never know what value these creators may bring to the space. I digress. During the fragrance meetup, I entered that event with a certain frame of mind. And I was thinking, much like anyone else may do, this is going to be my first time going to meet a brand owner, or potentially, because I had actually no idea if I would get a chance to converse with him in particular, but I knew I would be within his vicinity. So the idea is to make a first impression. That's where the fragrances come in. See, folks, a lot of times when you enter out there in the wild, most times you're making just the first impression with people. Most times you're just trying to make sure you don't look like a fool, for lack of better words. And for this one in particular, the meetup with Mr. Classic, see, the time frame of it wasn't exactly the most ideal for me. See, if I remember right, it was right in the dead center of one of the more stressful moves that I had been making. See, I was selling one property and getting ready to move to another at the time. And at that particular time, I had just been invited to start getting involved on screen, of course, during some community conversations for the live streams. And it's funny. There's this mental exercise that I've seen sometimes floating around the space where the question is proposed: what would you do if you lost everything, all your fragrances, but five? And what ones would you pick? Which ones would you choose? I'm going to be honest with you folks. I've always found the question somewhat silly, and of course it kind of is in nature, but I find it silly because we in the space, as we absorb, grow, and learn, I'll be honest with it, there's no way I'd return back to just one fragrance in particular, unless a situation like that happened, which brings me back to the previous part of the story. You see, during the move, at that particular point in time, I had boxed up every last one of these fragrances and I actually had them shipped over to another location, safe storage. And I was essentially forced to keep just a literal handful, no more than 5. I was forced to choose based off of sheer practicality. And during that time frame, as I said, it was a bit stressful for me. And one of the 5 that I originally chosen was actually from City Rhythm fragrances, and coincidentally, it was one that I had won during a raffle, a giveaway during a live stream. It's actually this bottle here, City Rhythm Manhattan. This is one of the bottles that still has the blue flaking within it, the sparkle, if you will. This is a black tea fragrance. This is black tea incense. Has a bit of tobacco. Opening has like bergamot, a little bit of cinnamon, violet leaf, whatever. It's a black tea, smoky incense fragrance. And for me, it was calming. This was a settling, centering type fragrance. It helped me calm down and relax a lot during that time frame. It was one of the first ones that I would say that I use for that purpose. Sometimes you experience anxiety or nervousness or just needing to wind down, unload, if you will. This is one of the first, I want to say, newer fragrances that I've had for that purpose. Now, obviously it's not new. I've actually had it for some time now. But this was the one that started that category in my collection. And up until the day that I knew I was going for the event with Mr. Classic, this is a fragrance that had centered me while I did things like pray and better fasting as well. City Rhythm Manhattan. And just for sake, folks, this is the official note card. I'll go ahead and read off the notes for you, just in case you guys are unfamiliar. So we've got, the opening is bergamot, cinnamon, violet leaf. I get more of the violet leaf bergamot out front. I also get a lot of the tea nuances, but anyway. The middle would be a tea, frankincense, myrrh, pimento pepper, and labdanum. That's some smokiness. Like I said, the tea earthiness is starting to come out. Now the base, though, the base is what was interesting for me. It is tobacco leaf, the leaf, vanilla, vetiver, and cedar. This was a centering fragrance, and it prepared me to get into the mindset, uncomfortability. That feeling of being the weakest one in the room again. See, that opportunity that was in Detroit, it was a split decision. One that I had made literally a day or two beforehand. And Ekron had shared about the event and the location. Like I said, it was in Detroit at a facility called the House of Pure Vine. I had never been to the location before, never been to that particular area or around fragrance aficionados, let alone a business owner. So I was very much stepping into that frame of thought, that mind frame, that you are the weakest in the room. Or so I thought at first. See, in the previous episode, the previous conversation, there was a sudden change of frame, a sudden change of thought once I had arrived. And it happened very suddenly, very quickly. You see, even though I had entered with a certain thought process, once Mr. Classic informed me that he had recognized me from Equality Fragrances live streams, more specifically the live stream that he did covering the brand with Mr. Classic giving a full interview. Once he had mentioned that, something clicked. And I immediately thought, okay, you're not just representing yourself. You have to be more. You need to represent it for the sake of the fragrance enthusiasts, your fellow co-workers, if you will. And more importantly, what it means to be a moderator. You see, when I entered the event, I knew after that conversation with Mr. Classic, not just in terms of a content perspective, but connecting the dots. That's the entire purpose of the Fragrance Meetup in the first place. See, we talk all the time online through these black boxes for our live streams, but it's always the social element, the face-to-face connection. These things are a soft skill that we learn to utilize in a social environment. See, these content creators have all found ways to try and illustrate that point to us, the general public. The utilization of these fragrances that we've come to know and love for the purpose of inserting us into the social space of whatever community environment that we come across or want to contribute ourselves to. In that particular event, even though up to that point was of one mind frame, I knew I had to show up and be willing to just work, regardless of what I had previously thought. Now, truth is, I also felt this was going to be a rare opportunity. I mean, without all the hoopla about it, I was getting the chance to meet Mr. Classic. My brother had met him in a previous event and had a chance to have a conversation with him as well. And I wanted to talk with him, if I could, a chance to get to know him. Keep smelling this one. This is actually the first bottle I've had from Mr. Classic. It is still my favorite from the brand, but I've had a couple rise in ranks. This is the one that I chose to wear to the event. It is, like I said, my favorite one. This is Soul Cafe. There we go. Mr. Classic was kind enough to sign my first bottle from the brand, but he signed 2 others as well. I have 2 other fragrances that I bought at that event. 2 others. One was Sin Santo and Sage. The other was Beau Noir. Hopefully I can get it though. He took the time to sign these after a small break in the busyness. See, he was still very much in business mode, and it just so happened to be during a home game that was going on. And in between the sales to the customers that were in attendance, I managed to have a heart-to-heart conversation with Mr. Classic. And after that heart-to-heart, he was pretty much exactly the way my brother said he was, that way. That's why I made him that promise. It wasn't because of the brand or how much I loved Soul Cafe. By the way, I had put this dent into it, like, just a few months after the purchase. I actually have been buying these from the brand and going through these so that I don't burn through this bottle. See, it became a memento once he had signed it for me, and getting them signed by the owners or the creators themselves is that's something special. For me in particular, this is a trophy, a memory of that event, of that time frame, what it is to make sure that I remember that I'm not just representing me. I have to do a little better, a little more. The Soul Cafe, that tobacco bergamot, the blood orange, patchouli, a musk, an amber wood, some like a firewood almost. It's very soothing. The coffee, the pepper, it's I also get like this caramelized woodiness in there. See, this is sexy. It's inviting. This is something special to me. And it was something special to me before meeting Mr. Classic. But after that, it's one of those scent memories. And I didn't even necessarily realize it was going to be like that for me until afterwards. Kind of the same way that I have with the City Rhythm. See, the thing that makes this whole fragrance, these soft skills special, is that the utilization of these in the social space. That's how it is all designed. We're supposed to touch grass, as EQ would say. We're supposed to go out into the unknown, venture, be willing to make a mistake, make a lot of mistakes, learn from said mistakes if possible. And sometimes you really can learn that you can hit the mark. You can be of use. You don't have to be that weak link unless you really are cool with being the exact same way you were. That clarity of purpose. For me, that became clear when I made Mr. Classic that promise. When I told him that I would do my best, which is an evolving term. That wasn't a stagnant promise. That's an evolving one. A continuation. A reminder. Now reinforced with a scent memory. And, of course, a little bit more than that. A few gifts as a reminder. Now, having attained much more from his brand, Soul Cafe, Beau Noir, Sin Santo Sage, Whiskey Rose, Love Suede, and of course, Ascension. This is one of the first houses. It is the first house where I got to meet the owner. Where it crossed borders from a hobby, something that you do in this space of the black box online somewhere, but it crossed over into the real world. Technically, it's not the first house that did that for me. That one's over there. But this is the first time I got to meet the owner. And the first time that I made a public promise. One that wasn't just adhere. That I would do my best for someone else. As far as this space is concerned. And if there's one thing that I picked up throughout my lifetime, when I get into that mind frame where I'm the weakest link, the one that has the least to offer at that time, it's that I never stay that way. Sooner or later, I make sure I contribute to that space. Sooner or later, I make sure I'm very, very clear in my purpose and function. Sooner or later, I make sure to leave a mark, a lasting impression. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that is still an evolving promise. Thank you, Josh. Josh Iguina. His tag is Elroy Preston. You can find him on IG and on YouTube. I'll try and make sure I link him in this video. And I'd also like to attach some footage that I took from that event. Now, disclaimer, folks. I had to make sure that I kept the camera low, so I didn't include anyone that didn't want to be on camera, because not everyone's cool with showing the face on this or being associated with you, not for anything other than wanting to preserve their own privacy. But Mr. Classic was kind enough to allow me to essentially interview him. It was sort of on the spot, but it was my first interview. But it was probably one of my more fun ones. I look back on that time in fond memories. Clarity. I meant what I said, Mr. Classic. I meant what I said to each of you. Stay Fresh Productions, TLTG Reviews, Quality Fragrances, and last but surely not least, Educase Jr. I made a promise to each of you the same way that I did to Mr. Classic. And I made it that day at that event. If there's one thing that I like to say, if anything, for this video's purpose, it's that I hope you guys are glad you took that risk with me. Because I'm glad I made sure to make that promise to you and to deliver on that promise. It's an evolving promise, one I'm going to keep all the same. A clear purpose. Yeah. That's it for this conversation.